What is up, everybody? Welcome to today's podcast. This is the Couple on Fire podcast. On today's episode, we're going to be talking about Worth 2, elevating self-worth in marriage. And when's that coming up?
Right now.
Right now. Thank you so much for joining us on the Couple on Fire podcast. This podcast is for couples, for marriages, and for families within the Christian community. We exist to help break the stigma that happens within the Christian community. We're talking about divorce, we're talking about addiction, and we're talking about so much more. We believe that all this is possible in this life strictly based on the power of Jesus Christ and his ability to restore us fully. Let's dive in. What is up? What is up? What is up, everybody? I am one of your hosts, Josh. I'm here with the always gorgeous, beautiful, smart, intelligent, driven, successful.
Okay, babe.
Christy.
No one cares.
I care. I said it all.
Thanks, honey.
Welcome to the show. If you weren't here in the very beginning of our show and been able to see it, we had our little baby Stella dog. She was making a cameo, and she's a little too thick to be able to just be held the whole time, so we can't hold her, our little French bulldog. So today we actually want to talk about elevating self-worth in marriage. Now, if you're here for the very first time and you haven't had an opportunity, go to the episode before this one, and you can watch or listen if you want to know a little bit about our story, about why we even started doing this, why we have a podcast, and the whole purpose and point behind that. So I think it's season 8, episode, I don't even know. I'm going to lie to you right now. I don't know off the top of my head.
You're going to pin it, though.
I will. I can pin it. Yeah, I'll pin it. But if you're listening to it on audio, though, right. So I want you to be able to just go back one extra episode. I'm going to, for now on, I need to remember to make sure to start writing it down so I can refer back to it each and every time. But before we even dive into this episode, which this is going to be a pretty heavy episode, before we dive into it, what happened this weekend?
Oh, we had our Perfectly Blended event, our third annual Perfectly Blended event, and it was awesome.
It was awesome.
Yeah, it went off so well, and we get couples, and we had Jay and Laura LaFoon as guest speakers, and a lot of community connections, people being able to talk to one another about things that are going on. I mean, I'm talking like women breakout groups talking about openly about things that they have to deal with or that women suffer with, like emotional things that when it comes to sex or when it comes to having hard conversations or seasons of our life we go through to menopause, from, having your normal and monthly things to starting menopause. And then men had breakout groups. I wasn't in that room, but I'm sure they had lots of stuff that they talked about too. Like, women are always nagging me.
No, but it was how to love your wife better in their language and not your own. I think that's so important. I mean, it is perfectly blended, but what we like to focus around is the power of marriage.
Yeah.
And we know that if we have a grounded marriage and a solid marriage, that our family will have a much better fighting chance to be able to survive. And so a lot of the stuff that we talk about, we do talk about a bunch of blended things, but we talk with the focus around marriage is really what we've tried to focus around everything. And this year's theme was fortified. It's about fortifying your family and your marriage.
And 3 of our 4 kids came and were at the event, and we had many couples come up to us this year just saying, hey, it was really awesome to see your kids here helping. And I think it's powerful because it gives people hope. Because blending family, kids can really not like each other. And the reason why our 4th one wasn't there doesn't have anything to do with not liking the other ones. It's the fact that he doesn't like church. So,
yeah, unfortunately. For now, this is the season we're in, but we're praying for it and we're pushing through.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, Rob and Carrie. Yep, they both were there. I'll put that on the screen. Rob and his wife, Carrie, were both at the event. It was amazing to be able to see them in person. So thank you so much.
We have fun. We pride lunch.
More of those events.
We take pictures.
Yeah. We need in general, we need other churches to step up and really start promoting, the service to blended families, the help for blended families, to have more of a talk around it. So, thank you for saying something, Rob. It is extremely
and for coming.
Important. Of course, for coming.
Yeah.
So with that being said, November 9th of next year, right, 2024, that is our tentative date. So pencil it in. We're going to be making a hard push for it probably more towards the middle of next year to let everybody know. We'll kind of roll out a little bit about what next year's theme is going to be, kind of what the agenda is going to look like, things of that nature.
Yeah.
So we're excited for that.
We are. Okay. We do have another event in February too that we'll be doing.
We do another local event. Yeah, we're going to do one at a local coffee shop. So we're working on our church, Rob says, trying to get something going. Yay, yes. Even if we could just come in and do something small to be able to encourage those that are there, that would be epic, actually. So cool. All right. So today we actually want to talk about elevating self-worth in marriage. Self-worth is something that we personally deal with in our own relationships here in our house, right? Self-worth on both of our behalves and for different reasons. And let's be honest, self-worth is something I would think that everybody deals with to some degree.
Yeah,
because
I would say that.
Broken people raised by broken people, and we get in relation with other broken people. And that has a big impact on how we feel our worthiness is.
And a lot of people just take self-worth as a closed-minded, like one thing. Like women might take self-worth and relate it automatically to body image issues. But in marriage, it could be either. It could be body image issues. It could be bedroom issues. Mm-hmm. It could be conflict resolution issues. Yeah. It could be stepkid issues. Like, I don't feel confident bringing it up to my spouse because I have self-worth issues and can't argue as well as my spouse, as some people think. So it can be success. It could be so many things when it comes to everyone struggles with self-worth in some form or capacity.
Everybody does. And the one thing I hear a lot, and I know my wife will be a resounding gong with this, like, yes, because it is our self-worth when it comes to God. You know, do we feel like we're worthy for what God's love is for us in our lives? And you have enough trauma in your life and you really seriously struggle with trying to find that worth in that. And so if you have a hard time finding it from God, you're going to find it nearly impossible from your spouse. And how does that look? Like, how do you guys play that out? Like, what does that look like in your relationship? And how does getting through that look? So today we really want to talk about 4 things when it comes to self-worth in marriage. And hopefully this can shed a little bit of light on it. So if you're on right now, you're live, or even if on a replay, put us down in the comments a little bit about how does self-worth work in your marriage? Does it impact it negatively? Have you been able to work through it? Maybe you have a story of hope. Share the hope story even down here or in our private Facebook group. You're welcome to join that and share some hope in there. We're always looking for hope, especially when it comes to something like.
Or have you never talked about it and now you're like, oh my gosh, yeah, like I actually struggle with some self-worth issues privately and I've never even thought to bring them up to my spouse. You know? Yeah.
Because we'll suffer in silence with things like that too. We want to pretend, we want to look in the mirror and say something that we feel is a lie about ourselves to try and make ourselves feel better. But in all reality, we're struggling. And that's an easy thing to kind of struggle in the dark with.
Yeah, some of these points we'll talk about. I mean, I just got comfortable about a year ago with some of the things regarding my self-worth when it came to you. And if you ever screwed anything up and we had to get divorced, we don't talk about it.
Maybe if I died, I think I'm more comfortable with that one.
Or you died.
There we go.
That I would be fine. No, the whole point is I used to be super bad codependent. We'll talk about it in things. Yeah, it'll make sense when I elaborate on it more.
Yeah. It better. All right, let's start with number one. First point. First point is insecurity and jealousy.
I'm jealous. I'm a jealous person.
You are.
I am a jealous person.
I know, I like it.
But some of the jealousy, I have gotten better because a lot of my massive jealousy, like maybe rage jealousy, came from I was extremely insecure. And when Josh and I first started dating, sometimes them bad thoughts infiltrate my brain again, but I really felt like Josh should be with someone, that's like more of like a cheerleader-esque person that's maybe smaller, more petite, I don't know, more emotionally stable, like maybe always like happy boppy.
You don't even know me.
I didn't. That's what I thought when we first got together. And so like I would be like super jealous, but it came from my insecurity. Like if I even saw like a girl that even looked like that, like walk by us, I'm like, You know,
How you looking?
and then if we're honest, like the thought used to be like, I bet you he wishes that I looked more like that person, or I bet you he wishes he could be with that person instead of me.
Yeah.
And it would make me angry. And then the next thing you know, I'm like being angry at him, and he has no idea why, because I've already had this whole inner dialogue with myself, convincing myself that I'm not worthy enough to be with him, and he could never want me, and how could he want me, and he's lying about the whole thing. And I'm like taking it out on you. It's true though.
It is true. Imagine what that does to your intimacy. I mean,
Yes.
our intimacy, like it's a major block thing, right?
Don't jump ahead.
Careful.
Yeah, don't jump ahead.
She's just trying to skip through.
No,
you gotta watch her.
you said a trigger word.
Stop it. So with insecurity, let's be honest, low self-worth kind of breeds, that insecurity, that jealousy within the relationship. You start, thinking things and believing things that really aren't true. And we do something like, this is probably my favorite thing my wife has ever said in our relationship. I don't know. It sticks with me. And when I tell other people, they think it's brilliant, and I always give credit.
He does.
But she always says, thought bubbles are dangerous, putting thought bubbles over people's heads, kind of like in the comics. We're assuming what other people are thinking. And it's real easy if we have low self-worth to do that with our spouse. They think I'm stupid. They don't think I'm pretty or sexy or wonderful or great, or I'm good at this. They think I'm ugly. They don't like this body part. They don't like this, whatever it is. They think I'm a loser. I'm lazy. Like, it's real easy to think those things when we feel poor about ourselves in those ways. And so what's the best way to remedy that stuff? And the honest to goodness truth is to be open and honest about that. Like Christy said a few minutes ago, I am jealous. I'm a jealous person, and if we go around and be like, I'm not jealous, it's because we're not comfortable with that part of us. And she tells you, like, I've never told her she's a jealous person. You need to get over being a jealous person. I've never said that. She's wanted to work on those things on her own. And so I think supporting our spouse through our own insecurities and our own jealousies and being open about it is where we find a good connection through it.
Yeah, and I want to, like, the Bible verse we put with this is Proverbs 14:30, and it says, a heart at peace gives life to the body, but envy rots the bones. And I think that's a good verse to talk about, but some of it also is a self-worth, like insecurity thing. It's an inner dialogue maybe with yourself. And I was just talking about my counselor with this the other day, that you struggle with. It's an inner argument with yourself. So not only do you put thought bubbles over other people's heads sometimes, but like me personally, I know a lot of women, I struggle massively with body image issues, right? And so like you can stand in the mirror sometimes naked and be looking at yourself like you're going to love yourself exactly how you are, and you're beautiful and God loves you. And then you're like, yeah, and you start getting like, yep, I feel like I'm pretty, all these things. And then another side of you, the devil on the side of you, is saying like, you are lying to yourself. Like, you are not good looking. That you could tighten up here and get some lipo here and get a lift here and a tuck here and all those things. And then you try to tell yourself like, okay, me trying to convince myself that I am worthy of love based off of body image. Yeah. I'm lying to myself now. And now you're like just arguing back and forth with yourself. Like, yeah, you should love yourself the way you are, but you're pretty chubby. So like, let's try to work on that a little bit. And it's just an awful thing.
It is, but I think...
And guys probably go through that too. But
they do go through that, and that's to be honest with you. And I think that what helps us get through it is that level of transparency in that.
Yeah.
And being transparent with each other. And I don't mean in a self-loathing way, right?
No.
I don't mean falling victim to saying, oh yeah, I always feel this way about myself. I'm ugly and I'm stupid and I'm dumb. No, there's no value in that, right? No. It's just about being like, hey, I want to talk about this. The reason why I don't like the lights on, when we're being intimate, this is the reasons why. Okay, I understand that. I like them on because I think, everything about you is something that I desire. And I think just having that open dialogue.
TMI.
No, but I think that's true in most relationships. But I think it's important to be transparent to help eliminate this insecurity and this jealousy, to block. Now, it doesn't mean it's going to remove those insecurities and that jealousy at times. But what it does is it creates a connection between you and your spouse, and it doesn't create a wedge. And that's the most important part.
Yeah, because I think having open and honest communication, even if you were communicating, let's just say with a member of the opposite sex that I felt was not right. Maybe you didn't see anything wrong with it, but I'm like, hey, I was uncomfortable with that interaction.
Sure. Yeah.
A little bit. You need to be able to talk about those things, but not get jealous to the point where you're angry. So if you saw me communicating with, let's just say, a guy, and you didn't appreciate, or you're like, I think that was just not.
It felt uncomfortable.
It felt uncomfortable.
Yeah.
You should be able to come to me and say, hey, that interaction just seemed a little weird to me or made me feel uncomfortable. And I shouldn't be like, what are you like getting
you're
mad
crazy.
about?
Yeah.
We should be able to talk about that because if you had that insecurity for a second, my main goal is to ensure that you feel safe in this marriage.
That's good.
And if you felt uncomfortable with something, I want to know that. I want to correct it because there isn't anything going on.
Yeah.
And I want to make sure I'm conscientious of the next time that I'm communicating with any man
Sure.
that I don't communicate in that specific way or make you feel that way.
And I think people, and I agree with that. And I think the thing is that I think it's important to hear in this situation is that it's not about catering to your partner and allowing them to just feel like they have control over, like, you can't talk to anybody or do anything. That's not it. The idea is to have clear communication to make sure, number one, that you're being aware of how you are acting.
Yeah.
That's an important thing.
Yeah.
And then number two, that you guys are clear together on this whole situation, and it helps remove a little bit of that tension that's in there. I mean, like, we don't hug the opposite sex unless it's a couple things, right? Like, we went to we went to a funeral, and there was somebody that was there, and I did a side hug. You know what I mean? Like, I normally wouldn't hug this girl, but I did, the side hug thing.
Yep.
That's cool, right? We're good with that. That's appropriate. That makes sense. You're not upset about that. Like, and I knew that, right? So it's like we have to be cognizant of how we act in situations too, because of the insecurities and the jealousy, but not necessarily to cater to that, but to help create a connection through that. I think that's important.
And that's the only way it can get better.
It's the only way it will get better.
So when Josh and I first got together, I was highly insecure and about a lot of things about me. And to be completely frank, I still feel to this day, he is the most perfect human beings I've ever met. But I viewed him as like,
Greek god.
Yes.
How you used to say it.
Yes. And I am like, I don't deserve him at all. And every time I got upset or jealous about something, I would go to him and I would talk to him about it and say, hey, I'm feeling this way, and I'm super embarrassed to talk to you about it. I'm like so insecure about things. And no matter how many times I came to him to talk to about it, he talked to me and he walked me through and he made me feel secure again. And over time, it took like 3, 4, 5 years, not days, years. And now we're 13 years in, and it's very rare that I would go to him. And first off, it'd be completely different now. I wouldn't go to him that humbly or passive. I would go to him and be like, listen, if you talk to that girl like that again, I'm going to knock her out. And then you and I are going to have issues.
Because I know better and I understand, right? Yeah, there is some clarity that comes in. So that's the first thing, right? So insecurity.
What about you?
And jealousy. What about it?
When we first got together, anytime, is there anything you want to confess to the audience that you've been insecure about?
I don't know. You kind of put me on the spot. I don't know. Why don't you tell everybody? What is your thing?
I don't have anything.
Oh, I thought you had something.
I want you to be raw and vulnerable. Is all I'm asking.
I am. I mean,
you can confess.
When it comes to insecurities and jealousy, I'm jealous of Christy's success that she's had in the corporate world, right? Like a lot, like hardcore. And so I've had to really work through that, but I've been very open and honest with her with that too. As a guy, it's like I've watched her climb the corporate ladder all the way to the top. And I'm very jealous, and that makes me very insecure about my abilities. But I know that one has nothing to do with the other. It's just my own insecurities. And so being more open and honest with that, I can be like, it's so much open and honest about it. I didn't even think about it when she said it. Like, we've been talking about it for so long, and some days
I didn't think of that either. I automatically go to body image.
Well, because you're a female, right? And you're very different than me, right? Not us guys are, we measure success by 2 things. And the other thing is
okay, got
the other thing is work, right? So that's work thing. So that's how that usually works. All right,
communication and boundaries are extremely important. Rob says that changes insecurities or jealousy real quick. Yeah,
it does. Absolutely.
Very, very true.
It does. Boundaries are a great thing, and so I'm glad that he brought that up, because that's kind of like our hugging thing.
Yeah, we spent 20 minutes on the first point. This is going to be a deep one.
I already said it in the beginning. All right. Second point is dependence and loss of individuality. dependence and loss of individuality. There we go. Sounded it out.
Oh my Lord.
You're welcome.
So this point seriously means so much to me too, because if you listen to our podcast a lot, and Josh and I read our story, we're both recovering alcoholics. Well, when him and I got together, he was 1.5 years sober and I was still an alcoholic. And if they tell you anything when you're first getting sober, within the first year to 2 years, you should not be into a relationship. Mm-hmm. They tell you to get a pet or a plant. And if those things live, a year, 2 years down there, then you can date, right? Yeah. And Josh, I was still an alcoholic, right? So he was in recovery, and they definitely, and under no circumstances, even if you're 10 years sober, should you ever date or intertwine with someone that is actively in addiction.
Yeah.
Okay. That's very bad for your sobriety.
Did it all wrong.
Sobriety has to be your first and foremost, right?
Yeah.
Well,
all wrong.
Josh and I get together, and now I understand it from the other side though too. So he got in a relationship to me, which is dangerous for him, and I'll let him talk about that. But I found my recovery by latching onto him, and we just have been talking about this over the last couple months, and it's been 13 years now that we've been together. But I really, in a healthy way, latched onto him, and he was a huge security blanket for me, and it was highly, highly codependent. It was where I couldn't even hardly I didn't want to go do anything without him. I would go to work and I'd come home. I didn't want to go to the store. I didn't want to go to church. I didn't want to go out with friends. And nothing, because I needed him to be that protection for me while I was so
responsible for you
of whether or not I was going to remain sober.
Right, whether you're going to remain sober. I think there were some notions of that earlier than that though. But I think big was a few years ago where I wasn't good and you were good.
Yeah.
And I was very uncomfortable with that because I wasn't used to it.
Correct.
Right?
I'm you don't you can be weak. I'll
Yeah, and I felt like our relationship really found some major balance through that though. Mm-hmm. For me, when we talk about dependence and loss of individuality, I lost it pretty early on in my life. And the way that I found it is when I was in my 20s, I found it through alcohol and I found it through womanizing, I'm going to be honest. And that's where I thought that it made me who I was supposed to be. And I tried really, really hard leaning into that lifestyle, and it just slowly kept eating away at my own self-worth. Because if you understand the way that when you're trying to seek worldly things to fill a hole that only God can fill, it just makes your self-worth worse. It just makes things worse. You think that you're getting ahead when in all reality, all you're doing is digging a bigger hole. Mm-hmm. And in that I became very dependent on these things to make me feel whole, which had an opposite effect until I did get sober. And I spent about 1.5 years completely alone with just my kids and my mom, basically. Mm-hmm. And it was before Christy and I got together. And I had a real big opportunity to really dive deep into who I was and what I didn't need to become who I was. And that was a huge portion of me. And so when you came into the picture, I had some wherewithal to be able to handle some of the things that we were going through, which I think God was preparing for that for us.
But this is the point that I was referring to earlier when I talked about if we ever had get divorced. So not that we would, but I used to think that and it doesn't even have to be recovering from alcohol. It could be from a toxic relationship. Maybe we were in an abusive relationship and then you get with a new spouse and now all of a sudden it's they're your security blanket and it's an unhealthy codependent thing. And it was very much I knew Josh. So this womanizing person that he's talking about, if you know our story too, him and I knew him back when I was 18. We didn't get together until I was 31. So I knew him back then when I was 18 and the womanizer he was. So now I'm getting with him. I'm getting sober, getting healthy, and I unhealthily latched onto him, which then deep down I also knew if he ever cheated on me, it would have crushed me to the weight to where I maybe would have went back drinking or all of these stuff. So when I'm saying I just have gotten to a point recently where it was like a light bulb moment about 1 year ago where I'm if that ever did happen, because I worry about those things because I have self-image issues, right? So I worry somebody is only, because it's taken me a long time to feel like guys are only as faithful as their options, right? So if I'm gone, and he goes on a work vacation for a week, and whatever's in front of them at the time, guys are visual creatures, is what they're gonna focus on. We just watched The Firm the other day, and he gets on the beach one night away from his wife, cheats on her, whatever. And it's like, okay, if that ever happened, like, I have to be around him all the time, because his sight can't go anywhere from me, because then he's going to realize that he shouldn't be with me, or he's going to end up cheating, and then I'm going to be crushed. And I've just now gotten to the point where I'm like, in God, I'm super not a self-confident person, and I wouldn't say my self-worth issues are anywhere near what they should be. But I am confident enough in God and in my relationship, in my healing that I have done, that I know that if that ever happened, that you cheated and you crushed me, that I would be okay.
Yeah.
And that is a huge thing to be able to say in a relationship, because if I could stress anything, for the first 5 years of our relationship, people, I was super, super codependent on him, unbelievably, to the point where I was fearful, always had to be knowing what he was doing and stuff. Cause I'm like, if he cheats, I'm dead,
Yeah.
And that's unhealthy to be that way.
It is unhealthy. And I think when we have self-worth that's so low, when we find something that we really feel like we're undeserving of,
yes,
we latch on in this super dependent
way,
and this
loss of individuality,
of who we are. We're like, okay, whatever you want, I'll be, and I'll be whatever you need me to be, so you don't leave, and all of these things.
And you can't make choices for your spouse, though. So I've had to come to terms that if Josh made the choice to ruin our relationship, that's on him, and I'm still going to be okay.
That's right,
because of that.
I agree. And that's a powerful one. Okay.
It is a powerful one.
Number 3. Avoidance of intimacy and connection.
Yeah, I think this is one that you could speak on a lot, because you and I have had years ago, I would say a couple years ago now, we were talking about intimacy in our relationship, and a lot of it was you feared rejection.
Absolutely.
Because he never had to, because he was a womanizer, he never had to ask for intimacy. Right?
I struggle with rejection, period.
Correct.
On all things. I think that if I go for a job interview, I should get the job. And I think that if someone challenges me on knowing something, I should know it. I feel like if there's something that needs to be done, I should already know how to do it. It's, being intimate, all
Correct.
of these things, right? This full on rejection. So that is a self-worth thing, right? I feel like I'm supposed to know everything. I'm supposed to be able to do everything. Christy is in the past, has called me Superman, and that's a lot of pressure, because I feel like I'm supposed to be Superman. I want to be Superman. We all do, right? All guys want to be all things and all the time and all the ways. But in all reality, being in a healthy relationship, my wife has allowed me to say, it's okay. You don't have to be. It really is okay. And I feel it comes from a genuine place with her, not a place of just telling me that because she knows she's supposed to tell me that. And I think it's really important, right? So what it ends up doing is it creates an avoidance of intimacy. You're not able to get close with your spouse if you have this fear of rejection that's in there. Because I've told her in the past, I'm like, I don't want to ask and you say no. I don't want to do that. Well, that's part of it. That's how it works, right? Because I always feel like if she asks, I'm supposed to always say yes, and it's this weird balance, this internal self-worth thing that I have going on. And it does, that can come in the way of your intimacy, of coming together, love and care and other things that you have in your relationship.
Well, and I think being unworthy, if you feel unworthy of love. So I had always felt unworthy of love, and that came into why I was so unhealthy dependent on you, because I had rejection my whole life. Rejection. So I had gotten to a point now, and still am, to where that doesn't bother me at all. You have it happen so many times in your life that from parents and from family members and all those things, that you get okay with okay, if I don't know something or you don't appreciate something about me, that's fine. But the unworthy of love is a huge one. So I felt like I still am struggling with understanding God's love for me, that I don't have to produce to get him to love me or love me more. Like, I know he loves me, but he'll love me more if I pray more, read my Bible more, have a servant's heart more, give more, tithe more. And it's not true, because God is love and he is, but I have a very, very hard time with that. And
I want to challenge you on something. So would you say,
you're not supposed to challenge me live on air.
I know, I want to challenge her though, because I want to ask, right? Like, so, but I think you're that way, not with people though, but with yourself.
Correct.
I don't mean with God though. I mean with God too, but I mean, you've noticed that if you put in hard work and determination, you find success. That works in your life, right? So you get more, you earn more if you do more. And now to try and take that and reposition that in the way that God feels about you, that's different.
Yes, because though, like my therapist was saying, it's because I've never experienced unconditional love, you know, until you and I got together, but I was an adult. I was 31,
yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So it's like I was having to do certain things and my mom was happy with me. And then if I don't act a certain way, you know, even as an adult, you've experienced my mom, and we don't have a relationship now, but unless you're doing everything she wants you to do and keeping her happy, she can just be done with you. And my dad was the same way, like this. So I never had experienced unconditional love. Like my grandparents loved me. They never left me, but it wasn't a nurturing love. It was we'll provide for you, clothes, food, roof.
Right.
But we're not all of those things. So I'm having a very hard time. This is getting into my therapy session now. Of understanding what God's love is unconditionally and not having to produce and achieve in order to win his affection.
Which gets in the way of your intimacy with him.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yes.
Which right, the way you say it, remove, you know, because you're kind of getting into that works-based grace, love, care.
Because then some of it is like, if I'm not doing as much as I should be doing, he doesn't love, like he shouldn't. He should be mad at me. You know, and then that's the argument that I get in my, seriously, you're smiling at me because I know you that, you know, that he adores me. He adores the way my brain works.
I do. I understand. And it's like one of my things in life is to help in any way that I can to reverse this way of her thinking. Right? Like
I was sobbing. Like, I'm glad that I'm talking about this right now and not crying. Because at Celebrate Recovery, I was sobbing, crying, like the snot cry. And then at my therapy session, I was crying too. So it's hard for me. I'm talking about it more like in a business sense right now. Now I'm not really getting in the feels.
Keeping it factual.
Right.
Keeping it factual. But that's the point, right? So you know, self-worth can help us avoid intimate moments and intimacy, period. I don't mean just intimacy isn't sexual, but I mean overall intimacy is in like sharing each other. And sharing, you know, with God and God in the middle of your relationship. It removes connection. It really, really does. And the only way through that is right back to even what Rob said earlier. It's about communication. It's about communicating through those insecurities. It's about Christy talking to her counselor and talking about it in CR and then talking about it with me and then and that's how we work through these things and we remove that space that's getting held there and remove that space and be able to allow that intimacy to happen.
But I think it's very, very important to say that you should be talking to your spouse about this first and foremost, about everything.
Hands down.
So if you're struggling with these things, you shouldn't be going to, number one, any member of the opposite sex and discussing it with them. Yeah. And then the second thing would be not to be going to parents or friends about it. You should be going to your spouse so that you guys can work through these things together.
Agreed. I agree. All right. And the final point, number 4, is projection and blame. Projection and blame.
Ephesians 4:29 advises speaking only when it is helpful for building others up according to their needs. So this can be a powerful one about projecting. So it could be even coming down to, you hear about a pastor that had an affair on his wife. And like, I don't know, lately Josh and I would say over the last year or 2 years, I know I always say that, but that's because that's my time frame. I don't know what else to say. It's came out like a lot of guys that we wouldn't think have struggled with something that is important to me, which is faithfulness, right? It's like, you know, I was molested growing up. I learned to think men are like disgusting and they're so easily manipulated by sex, right? And women. And so you think that you know, and then these things come out. And then it's easy in that moment because of my insecurities, right? To be like, all guys are disgusting. I know it's only going to be a matter of time. See, even the strongest one that we thought for sure would never, is doing it. And you're doing porn or you're doing something, type of thing. Because guys are incapable of just having eyes for one woman. They're incapable. And so then we have to, that's blaming him, right? When he hasn't done anything wrong. It's like having the dream. And then you wake up and you're like, you cheated on me. I dreamed it, type of thing.
You're just putting me in the boat of everybody else. Right.
Yeah. And this is something that's easy for me to talk about, that we've had to talk through these things with each other because my biggest insecurity is self-worth and feeling like there's no way that he's going to only has eyes for me and finds me attractive and, only wants to be with me forever. And so that's a huge insecurity of mine that we have to talk about all the time.
All the time. Yeah, we do. And I think we do a good job of it.
We do a very good job.
I don't feel like we get
like high five.
There's no hey word.
Yeah.
I don't think there's any spots where we're ever feeling like it is being projected and blamed though.
No, I could is what I was saying.
I know, but I feel like maybe even early on, maybe there was a little bit of that. But I don't feel like we're there anymore. But I think it's real easy for us to take our insecurities, our self-worth issues and put it on our partner. Because number one, your partner is going to be your closest person on this planet, ends up being the person that knows you the most intimate, everything, right? And then try to put everything on them. And it has nothing to do with you. Like justification. And I'm going to use this as an example because I think this is an easy example to say. I don't want to go to the gym because there's other women at the gym, right? That's an easy thing to say. Now, depends on what kind of gym you go to. It depends on what time you go. It depends on all these things, like what type of exposures at the gym. Like, let's remove all of that type of stuff. Let's just say you don't want to go there because you automatically assume that there's people there that want something that you have some type of insecurity for, right? So you think people are there, guys are there just wanting to have their shirts off all the time, right? And you're like, I don't want to go there. I have a belly and I don't want to be around all this, so we shouldn't go to the gym. Right? And it's not my fault. It's because it's them. They shouldn't be doing them things. Well, it's an easy thing to say. Just don't go to that gym. You can go to a different gym, right? And I think that projection blame thing is easy for us to deny. Like, maybe I'm just insecure about it. Maybe I'm insecure about the way that I look. Doesn't mean I have to blame that place for being that place. I just don't go to that place. And there's nothing wrong with that, right? It doesn't mean that, that our insecurities are necessarily even bad or we're all insecure. And I think that's a big misstep too, is I think that it's real easy for us to think and say that people have it, you're only reacting like this because you're insecure. Yeah, we're all insecure. We all have insecurities. Everybody does. And we need to stop trying to project that blame on other people, especially our spouse, if we're feeling insecure or we have a self-worth issue about something.
I mean, you could easily do that because you shared earlier that you have some jealousy about my success in the world. And you could easily do that about like if I have to go to a work conference or if I have to go out to dinner after work with all my work people.
Yep.
It's a mandatory thing sometimes that I have to go to. You could blame me for that and we could get in a fight potentially.
We could.
Because of that.
You shouldn't be going to lunch with men.
Correct.
All these things.
Yeah. You could. And that's something that him and I have had to work through about that because ultimately it stemmed from him being insecure, which I never thought like Josh is not insecure about anything. Right. That was in my head.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. But I am. I do. I have my own struggles. I mean, we do. I don't worry that my wife is going to go run out on lunch and have an affair with a guy. But at the same time, I'm
like, nobody wants me. Like, what is wrong with you? You
ridiculous.
Beauty's in the eyes of the beholder.
There's a lot of beholders of these eyes. Let's just be honest with that one. But the point is that, it's real easy for me to project that on her and say, I don't want you going to lunch. I don't want you, I don't want you doing these things.
And then put more stress on me.
Absolutely. And then, instead she tells me where she's going. She tells me who she's with. She tells me these things. She takes me to her work. I meet all these people. I get to know these people. Like there's a lot of interaction and stuff to help remove all of this projection, this blame, this push of my insecurities on you, you on mine. Like it eradicates it is what it ends up doing.
I love it.
Removing it. Yeah. Yeah. Overcoming projection involves self-reflection, right? We got to self-reflect, which we were kind of talking about, and identifying the root of one's own self-worth issues. This is where like personal growth should be a centerpiece to your walk with Jesus. Like it should be. right? I mean, the Beatitudes, that's exactly what it is. It's about self-improvement, about improving your oneself, right? And I don't mean self-help because we can't help ourselves, right? We self-improvement means we look to God's word and then we find ways that we can improve. And we do that by self-reflection, understanding the reasons why we're struggling, be open with our spouse about those struggles, and then moving forward and not pointing that finger.
Right. I mean, it helped me a lot. I shared it at the event. So if you weren't at our Perfectly Blended event, you're going to miss a lot of the visuals. But it helped me a lot when I went through my foot issues and Josh had to bathe me, right? As far as my self-image issues goes, because it's like, I couldn't care about how my stomach looks while I'm sitting in the bathtub having to have him wash my butt. Like, it's like I couldn't. And there's nothing I could do about it. And it's so funny to me because I was actually thinking women, I don't want to say all women, but like a lot of us, we think that they really don't know what we look like. Like, we have hidden it from them so well and positioned and posed ourselves in every scenario and everything, naked and clothed, that they have no idea that I've pulled the wool right over his eyes and I'm actually a very disgusting person. And now all of a sudden when I'm in the bathroom and he has to bathe me, that he's going to be like, oh my gosh, I didn't know you look like this naked, which is not true. Like, it's
That's
not
so
like
true.
I was thinking about that after the event even. And I'm like,
it's self-denial.
I convinced myself that's like, we hide it so well. And it's just not true.
I think that's funny that applies to so many things with us and our insecurities with our spouse. That is so true. So many things, like there's so many things that we have that we think it's like I didn't know that, it's like, I'm not trying to make you feel uncomfortable, but it's like, duh,
I just said it to him the other day. We got our pictures taken about something and, I'm like, he's like, and I'm like, well, the only person that's a surprise to is us because everybody else sees what we look like all the time. Yeah. And then you see a picture of yourself and you're like, oh, that's what I look like. It's a surprise to you. It's not a surprise to anybody else.
Right.
Because that is what you look like.
Every day.
In all scenarios.
Every day. That's true.
And no one stops being your friend. No one, like.
Nobody's disgusted wearing masks around you. Closing their eyes.
People still love you.
That's so true. Yeah. Well, why don't we tie this up by reviewing the 4 points for everybody?
You want me to?
Please.
So the 4 points were insecurity and jealousy. Low self-worth can breed insecurity, leading to jealousy and mistrust in marriage. Mm-hmm. Number 2 was dependence and loss of individuality. So when one's self-worth is low, there can be an unhealthy dependence on a spouse for validation. 3 is avoidance of intimacy and connection. So a person with low self-worth may avoid intimacy, fearing rejection or feeling unworthy of love, which can create distance in the relationship. And when we say intimacy, we don't just mean sex. We mean like emotional intimacy, closeness. Yes, thank you. And then the 4th was projection and blame. So people may project their feelings of inadequacy onto their spouse, leading to unwarranted criticism and blame.
Boom. There you go. Thank you so much for
very good point
being here. We hope you enjoyed this episode. If you didn't have a chance yet, like, subscribe, or share, depending on which platform you're on right now. And we really appreciate you being here.
And if you don't like it, don't watch.
She ain't too shy to say that one, is she? I want to thank you guys so much for being here. We're here every single week, 7 p.m. Eastern on Tuesdays. We'll see you next week.
Bye.